I'd like to introduce you to this year's Experiments platform mentor list. So we have here Yuan Chun, we have Klodiana from Millona, we have Miodrag, we have Erika and Dénes from Architecture Uncomfortable workshop. And with these people, we would like to start our panel discussion about experimenting ways in education. And first of all, I have a question which touches the very roots. So what was each of your personal experience in the education field as an architecture student? So maybe Klodiana?
Yep. Okay. Well, first of all, it was not so long ago. I think I graduated from my master now 6 years ago, so it doesn't feel so long. I had two different experiences because also of the context where I did my first studies in architecture, which was where I come from, Tirana. And then I had a gap in between, trying to figure out if all the knowledge I got could be practiced and happily practiced in the field. And then I got into education again. So this jump also shows a little bit my relationship to educational spaces in architecture. Just to say that I didn't find so much difference between the two contexts. When I went to my master in the Netherlands, I thought there would be a different approach, but somehow I still learned about the same heroes that I learned back home. Which is interesting because when I was listening to the previous presentation, it is interesting for me this question, what does it mean regionally to question forms of space production, like the Baltic, for example. So coming from the Balkans, it was interesting for me because we would learn in school, you know, the big European, mostly European man heroes, like Corbusier or whatsoever, but then you go out in the street and you see like different things, mainly also because of different production of spaces that come out of other conditions, like social, political conditions. So it was, to keep it very short, it was a very confusing experience. And at the same time, that's where I think in contesting that knowledge, which I didn't find comfortable, that's where it came also my eager to unlearn and relearn what is spatial production.
Thank you. Maybe let's follow all the members of Millona and Yuan Chun. Maybe you can tell about your experience. You can take this mic, actually.
Sorry. So for me, it's my experience kind of similar as Claudia because we were classmates. We started in the same program, and for me as well, like after I worked for a couple of years, I came to Europe to study also like because of all this like architecture heroes like MVRTV or May. And then actually I wasn't like, I was just everything more of following the school, but then also after I graduated, I kind of have some more time to reflect back. Like at the same time also to unlearn what we have learned from school, also have more thought. Actually, I feel my learning process almost also like extend after the school education, and then have some time to reflect back, kind of continue through that.
Yeah.
I also have rather confusing educational path because of I study let's say classical DeepL before internet, drawing with hands in a country that doesn't exist, ex-Yugoslavia. Then I was in Germany, kind of more into, you know, Frankfurt School and urban sociology and stuff, and I studied partly in China also, so in the future a bit. So I saw the future also and ran away back to Germany, where I'm now practicing some. But to make it short, my experience was also full of contradiction. I was always part of some kind of student unions that fight for better food in Mensa, or run the parallel summer school where we built pavilion. So I was practicing from the very beginning of my studies and learning parallelly. So when I finish university, I just carry on doing the same. So never kind of have this kind of gap. Now it's university, and now I'm doing something serious. It's just I have maybe better screwdriver or more money for wood. I didn't steal the wood, I bought it, or something like this. So that's my short-lived path.
Super nice path through a few decades, past, present, future.
90s, 2000 and 2010, last time I studied.
Erika, what was your path?
So I think it's also been shifting some, because I've been trying to steer a little like my interest through education, doing some different or being at different places. But I remember when I started, that was at KTH in Stockholm, I felt kind of closed in, or I remember this feeling of a lot of distances from being in like outside world, from like holding materials, from kind of engaging with society. You were like this was like my first like feeling that I was like disconnected or something. And for me, the kind of path has been very much towards hands-on making, or like building, and that's like where I searched myself. After bachelor, I was 1 year in a design build school in US, and there I think this is the place where I felt most at home. Was like you were in a very kind of poor community in southern Alabama, where you were building for that community, but it was something with like being there, working on a project, and being able to touch all different aspects of a building, like hands-on, meeting people coming in. So this was very nice. And then and at my master's, I was in like a new school, and for me there was something that was itching, that was like this disconnection between theory and practice. That's for me been something that I've been like, I don't know, striving a lot towards to connect.
For me, I graduated in 2010 in the Technical University of Budapest. I did it in 8 years, and as I remember, it was totally frightening. I was shitting my pants through the university, and it was because it was a very technical curriculum, and there were like 200 people in a class, and we didn't really see real things. Like, we didn't have a workshop. The only good thing was in the university is this technical detailing. So we learned how to do this detailing, and we learned a lot of technical stuff, physics, and a lot of useful things, but it was not so artistic curriculum. So I think that's why when I graduated and went into working in real life projects, that I think that it's totally different than the university. So working on real projects for real people, it was totally a revelation for me, and it was so much better. And I didn't feel stressed at all. And actually, university for me was a very, very bad experience because of this.
So maybe my question would be, if that's such an frightening environment, where do you all were looking for the places to find the alternative way of educating yourself back then and now? Maybe Dénes, you can.
Actually, all of my families are architects, so I just went into their offices and just saw what they are doing there. So that was my alternative studying, but I didn't really do any. Now I'm doing the doctoral studies at the same university, and I have the same chill every time I go back. So it didn't change really. I don't know. I didn't really have any other education besides this. So I pass it to you.
Erika, maybe.
I mean, I think for me, like inspiration, I found, I don't know, alternative, like, so where you find this, I found inspiration from outside of architecture, which is like one place of like gathering some like hope or strive or art, film, whatever. Like for me, that's been one thing. But then also like, and participating in things like this, you know, you meet people, like you can learn what is somebody else doing, how are they doing it, like you can ask afterwards, like how did you fund that, or because parts of it is not just like, you know, finding inspiration or like getting to know what you want to do, but then it's also like the structure of how to do it. And then I think also through projects, for me a lot of things been happening through like doing a project and then framing it in a way where people together, you learn so much. Like it can be a technique or an approach or just a person with their way of being entering that you learn or get inspired from. So I think, and a lot working with people from outside the discipline of architecture, I felt I learned the most of how to do architecture in alternative ways.
Thank you for your answer. And I believe that many people sitting here are young architects or young creatives who just really need the tips where to look for alternative ways of education. So maybe, Mia, you can share some ideas.
I'm not really a tip person, but I was always trying to find the inspiration in a social problems around myself. You know, it's just you go out and you know, see that maybe the roof of my parents' cottage is leaking and fix it. You know, from this very practical stuff till whatever child poetry. You know, it can go very wild. Problems there's enough, and nobody will solve them by calling architect and say, can you design a solution for child poetry, you know? But you can be a bit more proactive, and in those old good pre-Erasmus times, there was something like a summer schools of architecture, and I was always traveling in summer with fake Interrail card, like tickets. It's also a good tip for students. And then we will 3 weeks in Slovenia, for example, reconstruct the what was this? The hiker's house before you go very high. You know, like the last, how you call it, base camp. You know, and just with the 2 guys, you know, 3 weeks you live there for free, and you fix windows, make a new floors, cook. You know, so something like pre-sodas kind of student camps. This is one tip. But later, yeah, I think also in unusual situations, you know, you can really sit in the taxi and find out that it's a great architect sitting in front of you and knows about city much more than the set of data and algorithms in Google, you know. So I think it's architecture and dealing with it is all around us, and it's not, we just have to open eyes and a bit dismantle this idea of designer and look in some kind of social processes around. You want to say something?
Yes, please, Klodiana.
Yeah.
Any tips from you?
Yeah, well, I'm also not a tip person, actually. But no, I have to say that somehow I have to credit still the architecture school for for providing me with enough anger towards it to then search for, you know, alternative. And by alternative, I mean, it was also mostly like questioning things that I was not happy with, or I didn't find myself, or just, I think I got saved or liberated from the frustration that I also share with you when I started looking at the promises of architecture school in a silly way, because partially they are, you know, especially this idea of problem solving and this reduction to a designer practice that is only related to, you know, physicality of building, which partially is, it also is, but it only talks from very limited perspectives, you know. And I learned a lot, especially from, we will also show it in our presentation, I learned a lot from my passport, you know. That's where I understood what architecture is and is not. In the sense that, you know, going through, for example, airports, I realized that, of course, it's a great architecture project, and, you know, in school you only learn how to organize logistics of movement of people in space, etc. But nobody ever tells you that there are so many different people experiencing this airport so differently, based on other things than just the body, you know? So, and then that's where this liberating idea of understanding architecture also as, you know, providing or like politically arranging bodies in space. And then from that source, I started understanding what are people talking about it, you know? And then I realized that the best then space to literally get other like knowledges about architecture is still in architecture school, but contesting and questioning and finding peers that do the same, and then they start, you know, talking about it and producing knowledge about it through the same tools also, but just not kind of dismantling this master's tool, you know. So my tip is still, you know, search within architecture school, just whatever like triggers you that you're not happy with, try to understand why, you know, and then try to situate it then why it comes and why it's not the same experience for you and is different from the experience of the teacher that is telling it to you, and try to understand that differentiality, and then something will come out of it. But also try to dismantle this seriousness of architecture. I feel like it's real. For me, it has been so liberating, you know, a lot, actually.
Yuan Chun, maybe you have some thoughts to share.
Yeah. I don't know, like during our education, we also have a lot of confusion in school, and then because also kind of our group is from many different countries, and perhaps the school, they usually have kind of one perspective of seeing things. They always have to raise a problem and to create a solution to solve it. And we kind of, with a group of friends, we form a collective. So besides school, we also do project ourselves, and we learn a lot from each other, and also we kind of create this secure space that we can exchange our experience, our thoughts, and then through that we kind of also learn a lot from each other. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And basically, I guess all of you, even frightened with the formal education, you still thought that it's a good thing to try to unlearn and relearn things, but it's nice that you chose to relearn them with others and also working as tutors, as education person. So before the presentation, I've asked you to share some examples of your previous works in architecture education thing, and maybe we can just go through those projects. And the first one, as I remember, is Mia. So here is the magic wand.
Okay, the one that works with. Okay. Wow, my name.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, I have. They told me 5 minutes, but I have 15 slides. I'll be trying to get you into a very fast journey through one experiment. I was first thinking, okay, let's not show them some cool Berlin projects, you know, that I'm working in my institution. Let's show them something outside, because I work also in other social conditions. So this is Skopje, the city in Macedonia, capital, where I started last year with a group of students from architecture, like a very similar like you, like 4th year, to fight for one abandoned brutalist building, because as you know, after earthquake in Skopje, if you know this funny Japanese hipster group, this is Kenzo Tange, and his team, they build a kind of amazing project of reconstruction, and as a part of it, there was a lot of interesting, innovative brutalist buildings of a big scale, so mega structures. But this one was kind of forgotten in some kind of normal neighborhood, and as you see, become abandoned and surrounded by, you know, like combination of some Khrushchevka and some new neo tycoon guy with a swing pool there, you know, like, so like trapped in this is really where is my colleague from Latvia? This is Balkan strange, you know, in the condition of, you know, what I call political septic tank. It's situation, well, just to understand where I work always, you know, my favorite working condition is fucked up conditions, you know, so it's like everything is so absurd that nobody wants to work on it, you know, so this is my favorite starting point, and this is the point in which Socialist Party, I will say 2 times, Socialist Party, privatized the public building and then wants to build hotel, in which, I don't know which floor of 6, they will have their new offices, but in the moment they wanted to do this, they arrest the president and he went into jail, and when he came back to jail, he became a mayor of this district. So the situation is, you know, so strange that I say, I have to work on this, you know. And students were first, no, let's not do this, and this is so common, somebody will kill us. Said, no, that's really a great place. And we went there, and we asked them, I called and asked, can you give us permission to do something with the building you are not taking care? No, this is private property. But you're Socialist Party. No, it's our property. And then we say, okay, we'll do everything on this perimeter of, let's say, building. And I practiced with students. They were a bit afraid at the beginning, this disagreement culture, like how we can appropriate this building that is important for a history of brutalist architecture. Also, people are not even locally aware of the maybe importance on this typology, because it was a communal social cultural center, let's say, what we today call multimodal buildings for. We just make some kind of combination of protest, a human wall on the perimeter where we were in public space, and I ask students to talk to do research first locally, and to talk from the position of one member of this community house. It can be a library lady, or it can be a technician that worked there, to find one person that has some experience, to make an interview, and to make some kind of narrative from their own perspective. So we made a kind of calendar. It was funny actually now looking at this, that everybody was 1 month, starting from January, and you are talking not as a person, you talk like a character from history, you know. And then neighbors, they gather and say, what is this? Are you protesting on something? Who are you? And then they start to talk like these people they might know. They say, I am whatever, Miodrag Kuč from 1965, I was here working in the Mensa, and they were like, you are not that guy. You know, so it becomes like some kind of forum theater. And then came a lot of TV that we invited. It was a media campaign. It was total confusion in the media. Who are those people? Who is this strange guy? And I was Kenzo Tange, I forgot to say. I came from history, you know. So it's a kind of, you understand how I work with some kind of confusion theater tools. And this media campaign was very successful, and there was a big Facebook group now that is running the data. And then I say, it's so great, and they invite me from Faculty of Architecture. Hey, we want to do something specific, but now even more complicated group. postdoc people from all around the Europe. Ah, perfect. This is like, they are even better because they don't understand the context, you know. So and there was a project called Writing Urban Places. It's a part of some cost, if you know this university network, EU money, everybody's serious, you know. And then I say, okay, they came and they were like, okay, we will write now from the position of building. I changed them. So you are building now, and you have to bring one building, one building from your town, and you talk like a library in Glasgow. You are now whatever community center from Tirana, you know, and you have to ask. Also have to be brutalist building or modernist, and you have to tell from position. And then we start to work with some kind of forensic. I don't want to bother you with this. We do some archaeology. We say this building is now archaeological site, you know. And then we build this structure in the inner courtyard of the faculty and invite people from this neighborhood and also some intellectuals. It's some weird mix because everybody can enter there. It's really close to the green market, you know, into simulation of archaeological site. You know, like we say, brutalist building, okay, it's now nothing is happening, so we, the ministry decided this will be a new archaeological site for, you know, brutalist architecture. And they were like, archaeological, it has to be 2,000 years old, you know. And then actually what we did, we exhibited some pieces of architecture and asked for auction, you know, like, and we really give some money to people to trigger the discussion. Like somebody's buying the ceiling from the library from 1976, you know. And then this postdoc people from all around Europe, they came and she started to talk about, I am skyscraper in Tallinn, I'm abandoned, and they were like strange, you know, looking a bit, you know, like what they are talking about. But this was all connected to, you know, it has some narrative. And they didn't even notice that this is some theater piece that I'm making starting last year, and now it's a 1-year piece, you know, theater piece, and next week. And then we did this kind of narratives, the new narratives. So it's basically by performing, you're writing the text of a theater piece. It's a bit complicated now. I condense it, but that's it. And then actually the students and participants, they were happy at the end, and it was some kind of exchange with local community. And now I'm going next week there. That's why I show you this, to do the real archaeological site. And they send me a picture. They already start to build around the building, the scaffolding, and yeah, I send them what I need as archaeological guy from the costume, and so I'm coming next week there too. So if I'm arrested, I just want to tell you that that's what is the prehistory, you know, just to read that I'm in the jail. So that's it, Erika. Yeah, thanks for it.
Thank you.
5 minutes, but
Okay, can I ask me a question?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Because I'm curious, how do you engage the student in this work then? I mean, are they open for it, or do you have to like show them the way? Because it's like special pedagogy or special, you know, fucked up area theater, you know, like.
I mean, just the fact that they join me and this guy that invite them, that's already a good step. So there is a willingness to do something outside of their own curriculum. But I think mostly we work telling them, hey, we are all one production team, and you are now director of scenography. You know, and they, okay, I'm director. Okay, good. You know, like you're giving just like a very tough tasks, but also responsibility. You know, we are not playing here. You are responsible for scaffolding, and you talk with the company, and you will be in charge of whatever communication strategy, and you will be in charge of. So, like making a role like we are some kind of production team for an important festival, and Rolling Stones are playing tonight, and it has to be done. You know, not much. You know, you can read Lefebvre at home, but it's here we do the, and then they get really fire a bit. You know, and but it's tough because people that work with me, you know, they have to kind of sign the social contract. They have to work 15 hours per day. You know, that's a style. You know, but not in the office rendering competition for Singapore. But you know, like as people are coming and they're gonna ask you tough questions. Be ready. Okay, I'll be ready. But I think once they put a helmet, once they put a megaphone, you know, the people. It's in a let's say theater performance pedagogy is important to get person into the role. You know, if you get really good into role, you are empowered. You know. And then they're at the end dead, and you know, but satisfied dead. You know, yeah, that's it. It's very simple.
It's a kind of architectural role play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Can be, yeah.
And
but with a slight tension. Like
No frustration at all.
yeah. But it's fake, basically, you know. But they don't know in the moment. Go ahead.
Okay, it's me. Yeah. So I don't know if I stretched it a little, but my role within architectural education, it's not so alternative, or so far not so alternative. I've been in like institutions and like searching my way out a little. So like I chose the project that still has like it's practice based, and I've had the role as educator, and it's the one that's been most like memorable for me, like as like learning environments. So that's why I picked this one. And it's a project that is also like part of my my practice-based research, and it started as it circles around the transformation of the small building on the left there, and it started as me getting to know or getting in contact with two people that was living at the rehabilitation clinic for, it was called mental illness and comorbid drug use disorder. So having like two different symptoms influencing negatively each other at the same time. And that clinic is the one on the left. And I got to know them through a friend of mine that knew one person that knew this one guy that was one of these two people. And they had found this building and wanted to transform it as some kind of critique of the therapy that they were offered at the clinic. That was when I just have started my research. We kind of formed a team of exploring this, what we called architherapy together. And that turned into a project. So I thought I would give some keywords here. Like this was a project that was spanning for 4 years. And it was developing by me going to that site, and was developing from the site and from that area, together with residents at the clinic and people in the community around. And it started as a collaboration, but later on it was led by me. So from the beginning it was a collaboration between me and these two residents, Hans and Kim, about putting up the framework of what would be explored and what it could mean to build. And then later on they also left the clinic, came back from time to time. So then I was there running the project. That was like a practical project of exploring then, like both what it could mean to build, how to design a building process, like to invite people in the clinic, but also thinking, for me it was also a way of much exploring my role as architect at the clinic, like because I was working then, the way of working was that I was there, I was eating lunch and dinner there every time, I was inviting the residents coming in and in what way they would want to be part of the project. So some would choose to be more like participatory, like just come into the project, and some would like want to step in and be more part of exploring, or and how this, so I should also say one more thing for like background, and that was like what was so like powerful for me, it was inspiring when starting this project was both like that this was a critique from Hans and Kim that I started to work with of like the system they were in. So they were like, we get medicine, we get food, we get somewhere to sleep, but this is like, we are going to get out to society again, but there is not really something giving hope for that, or like we have nothing to do. So they were like in some way taking, or they were taking like their situation in their own hands, but they also had ideas of this idea of rethinking therapy wasn't just about like their situation, it was about thinking about the society they were in. So seeing a society not working, like they wanted this process to also be about reconnecting to nature, spirituality, or like to have a discussion and to show this through a building process. And this was very much, I said this because this kind of influenced how I framed or how this process developed. And that was to choose techniques and ways of building where engaging with the environment around would be part of building. So this is like, the main project, the main building technique we were using was natural-based building techniques. So we would like build up relationships to the environment around, collect clay, gather wood, and that was a way to like also materially reconnect with the environment, but also bridge this kind of gap that was between the institution and the local society. And then I just like now fast go through some images. I mean, I put in these images just to show, for me it was like a situation for learning a lot also, and this was like during the moment of making new foundations. And this guy was living at the clinic. He wasn't so interested being in on building, but he was always part and always reflecting, and he started then to have like small own project of discussing foundations or life. And so while building foundations, there was also this kind of discussions going around about that, and then those discussions became then written, or like some conclusions became part of the written on the foundation. And for me, this was just this was a way that he started to engage in the building process, as like using building elements as like concepts to think with. And I found that very interesting, this thing that I said also about like connecting theory and practice and how that can happen in like a practical project. And then I put in this one because I tried to really like relate to your question, or like how I understood what you were asking. I tried to be like good in in that. And then I was thinking of, like you said, like memorable moments as educator. And for me, there was these moments, like, because this is also why I chose this project. I don't like so much these like hierarchies between like educator, teacher, students, or like, I really like when you find these where you can work together. Okay, my role can be of like set up the framework and the path of how to work, but then also leave it open for people coming in and influence or changing or whatever. But there was these moments during this project when there was a lot of people from the clinic participating, where you could see that they got empowered by participating. And for me, these are like, those moments have been quite strong, where you set up something and you see, wow, this really means something for somebody. And that could be, I mean, for some it was almost like about decoding what a wall is. Like being part of building up a wall was like, okay, I start like, the world around me is not a mystery. Like I know how to construct it, I know how to build it, or I'm part of constructing it. Or for some it was about like learning the technique of then this mortar that was part of the masonry technique, then like learning that, acknowledging that I know that is like acknowledging I'm a person with knowledge, like I can do this. And then to see these moments was for me very like strong. And I had one more picture, but I think I can end there. Yeah.
No, you can proceed.
I can?
Yeah.
No?
Of course, of course.
Okay, this was in the similar way. Like I picked this one because it was, I wanted to say something about like this role, or how then having the role of leading this process, and how to use that kind of power with care. And one idea behind choosing this building technique that was natural based was also about giving agency to, because from the beginning we were building more, going to the building store, buying things. But then that was the situation where I had all the power or deciding. But when we started build with these techniques where you could gather material from your surrounding, everybody could also gather materials or be part, like more people could have agency. So this was a picture that I took from one day. One of the guys at the clinic had been like walking around the river close to it and found these small birches that was cut down by beavers, like a heap of them, and then bringing me there, and like I found material, get your car and we can take them to the, and this was like this, also this kind of moment where for him it was like powerful being provider or like acting. I picked him because, and also I wanted to show this project because for me it very much represents where I think it's interesting or where I like to be in like learning situations, like in some kind of real world situation where it's like different types of knowledges coming together, where it's also for me most interesting to be in because I learn the most. Yeah.
It's a very beautiful example when you come to the project as some sort of educator, but you come there to learn. And I guess most of us are doing this thing. Even Experiments platform is done because, you know, we didn't have enough nice education here, and there's this need to learn and to provide also. So very beautiful. And I guess Millona Lu, it's your turn to tell about your experiences.
I also had the same approach. I tried to answer your questions like a good student. See, the school still is inside of me. But no, I just want to make it clear that actually we don't, like me and Cam, we say we deal with pedagogy, but we are barely actually ever had structural jobs from institutions, because this is, I think, important to say, like, I am engaged in institution teaching, but it's always like through these very temporary contracts. And so maybe when we speak on behalf of pedagogy, we speak also on behalf of what we think. Through our work, we always include it as a way to disseminate knowledge with other people, but also learn. So in our understanding, that's what we call our role as educator. I mean, it's not, we are not really professional teachers. But nevertheless, I started like by telling you a little bit the traces of this process of learning and unlearning. So the picture on the left is, well, the picture on the right, I think everybody knows. It's a picture you would find in every architecture book, or at least in a presentation from a professor in any kind of schools. And then the other picture actually is an image you would find very common in Albania, but not only, also in the region, I think also in Macedonia, Kosovo, Serbia, Montenegro, so even south of Italy actually. And it never occurred to me that actually these two images are pretty much interconnected also in their kind of basic intentions. You know, my son Domino, I think you all know, was like this visionary module that Corbusier came up after First World War with the idea of solving the housing shortage crisis in Europe. And it is taught as such. And the other image is also actually an architectural model that came out after the 90s, after post-communist Albania, and with a shifting to a neoliberal market, although it was not really done specifically from architects, was from people. But this is how most of the landscape of housing in Albania looks like. Although, and nevertheless, we never ever learned this or had this as a subject in school. And then after many years, this was actually my graduation project, and it only could be validated in Netherlands in the master I was studying only when I had to show this picture together. So then my teachers took this project seriously. And I tell this also as an interesting realization for me, like how much in the education school, how much we still rely on what is a validated knowledge and what are institutional knowledges. And it's still within that I think we can still produce other kind of knowledge, especially starting from that contradiction, or if you want to produce a contradiction of such. The other picture, as I told you before, it's where I got more engaged in understanding better. That became also, let's say, our common starting point for our practice, in understanding also architecture beyond, let's say, the physical, or at least how architecture produces different kind of spatial experiences, and what kind of experiences are within these validated knowledges and what are left outside it, and are there a way to visualize this and learn something from it, or even maybe counteract the dominant narratives of reading-built environments. This is also a constant, like an ongoing project that we have in understanding actually how many times the way we move in space, or the way, even in school actually, how much it is an invisible architecture, and invisibilizing it, we actually also understand the power relations behind built environment, but also the politics behind it. So my first experience as a teacher, even by contract, let's say, was not an invited one, was somehow something that me and a former colleague of mine, we studied together also with Cam actually, we just finished the master degree in Netherlands. So we had this need to, I mean, we were lost, of course, and we created this kind of informal study program, which we proposed a little bit with a lot of, how to say, we forced a little bit our head of department to provide us the space. We called it Usta. Usta is a word actually a lot of countries share, but basically, you know, Albanian it means master, but also in Persian, and my colleague was Persian, and we were making fun of this idea of what does it mean to be a master, and Usta is usually a name that, for example, a plumber has. He's a master of plumbing. So we wanted to create this informal program for the next generation of the same master that we were previously studying. So we created a series of like small programs which were more intended to liberate the students from the stress of the architecture studies. So one of them was this Freudian session, we called them. These are all hacked spaces within our architecture studio with whatever found materials. And we would do experiments, for example, explaining graduation projects without images and just with voice, and like and having them non-compulsory, although they would get some credit if they would join. And then we had a lot of students coming in. We then created different programs together with the students, for example, with reading sessions, but also a lot of dinners and presenting through food. We also started looking a little bit, because presentations are one of, let's say, the spatial arrangements most stressful in architecture, because you have to sound smart and you have to come up with a brilliant solution, and somehow the whole work and labor behind it gets lost. So we started producing publications with every material that is not made in presentations, and then discussing about it, why it didn't make it. And at the same time, like questioning these kind of tropes that validate knowledge with students. For example, these are some parts of it. And we started binding it in like also whatever form they had, like big posters or whatever. Yeah, it didn't get extended, I have to say this. We had so many complaints from other teachers because they started saying that if we allow every student to become a teacher, then we will have this cult close community, which is a bit weird because every teacher we know, they are kind of friends of each other and inviting each other to teach. But I mean, for us, it was fun to be 1 year in school, like in this formal, informal teaching position. Then we decided to talk about a recent educational project that we were engaged with. It was also a kind of fucked up situation. It was in Pristina, in Kosovo, very close to Skopje. And it was in a former brick factory, abandoned, part of a very big cultural event happening in Pristina this summer. And we were part of a big team. It was a collective from Berlin, Raumlabor. And they were invited to do an intervention in this former brick factory. And somehow I was involved, and I was dealing also with the educational program of this project. And we decided to not produce like an artwork that is finished for visitors to come and see how beautiful a place like this can be transformed, also because of the dynamic of the place. But we decided to actually have a 2-week summer school where the whole process of transforming it is done together with students. And it was centered around, of course, ecological practices, in the sense also because this place, differently from how it was introduced to us, was filled with waste, which we figured out was like domestic waste, but also commercial waste, in the sense that a lot of people were working there, recycling scrap material, plastic, etc., completely informally, of course, but somehow dealing with the waste that we as a society produced, even beyond the borders of Kosovo. Like a lot of cars were coming from Germany and then coming back, etc. So we wanted to visibilize these practices, and we called the school Working on Common Ground. For example, we have, this was one of the buildings, and it was transformed in a pool, which resembled a bit this Albanian traditional hospitality archetype of a house where also decision making are made. And the many things you see outside this building are all part of process of natural filtering of the water. So this is what students were engaged with, like especially in terms of infrastructures of care. For example, for a pool, we were trying to visualize everything and start to understand like how much engagement there is behind. For example, if you want to substitute a chemical cleaner of the water, what does it mean to naturally do it? And as you can see, there was students even put like clothes that would like stop the sand, etc. So there's different layers of learning. This is how the factory kind of looked like. They had like a lot of, there were around 40 students, 20 locals and 20 from international schools. There was a lot of kids hanging around, and some interventions also came out as a need of, for example, shade. You know, it's very, very hot in Pristina in summer. Of course, domesticating the place through creating kitchens. Like there was nothing there in the beginning, and then of course many workshops were also about trying to read this site beyond maps, and in a form of also archaeological site, because the different layers of history also are there. So this is how students try to find ways to be situated in the place and read also levels of toxicity, try to mediate what does it mean to talk about it, and also try to critically look at our being there, in the sense of, you know, a lot of cool people also from Berlin coming and talking to people and telling their story through their words. But then we saw students, for example, instead of, I don't know, archival research, they would just rather go and talk to former workers. And other workshops, for example, were dealing with transformation of materials through fire, also kind of reconnecting back to what the factory had as its center activity of baking bricks, but also as also the very form of producing pollution. Yeah, students also tried to have different spaces, and there was like this do-it-yourself way of producing. This was the final pool. These are also stolen letters from a hotel which was called Parliament in Pristina, and they we just took them from the city center. These are the kids of the neighborhood. These are many talks we used to hold. And this, of course, the main material was bricks and was being taken from different parts of the factory, and with that recycled and rebuilt everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
So actually we are two with Lukács. My partner couldn't come. He doesn't really like to fly, so that's why I'm alone here. The first time we really met real students of architecture, it was back in 2014, and there was a camp called Hello Wood in Hungary, in the countryside, and we were selected as workshop leaders. So we came up with the theme Playground. And every team there were like 13 teams working with the architecture students. Every team had designed some structures before this camp, but we only told them to bring their like 3 or 4 cubic meters of material. So we didn't do any planning before. And this was a bit of a shock for these students, that everybody knew what to do, how to do it, and they were building up so fast. And in the first few days, we were just talking and trying to find out what's a playground for us and what are the elements of play, what are the tools of play, what kind of geometries are there, what kind of rules are there. And we tried to disassemble these things onto the simplest elements and then put them together again. So we think that we do the same with architecture, a bit like we try to forget as much as we can what we learned from university and what we know from architecture and these systems in architecture, and we try to disassemble everything onto the smallest pieces and put them together again to form another structure which can be a new thing. Or we always want to do things which we never seen before. So that's why I will show you on the right side there is a sand wall structure. I will show it later. But so we got these timber material and we tried to do some structures which were resembling somehow some plays or some elements of playgrounds or elements of gates or tools or rackets, or they are recalling some elements like this, but we really try to make new kinds of playgrounds and put these elements together in different ways. So here you can see this wall which we made, which we used for different activities, and actually it looked very good, I think. But besides that, it forced the students to think in different terms, like yeah, and this is the sand wall. So we just came up with the idea that we want to make a sand wall, which is like sand is forming a wall. And we made this container, we put a lot of sand in it, and this actually was falling for like 2 minutes. So we wanted to take a look how it looks, and we wanted to make it. So and that was the same with the other tools and things that we like to invent new rules and invent new games. So this whole workshop was a bit childish, but we and they really liked it at the end, and they get it after a while what we wanted with this whole thing. But for the first few days, they didn't really, they couldn't really do anything with it. So it was a while. It was a while until they realized what's our tactics with this. This is another. This was the second time we met architecture students. It was also Hollywood in 2018, and by this time we made a lot of solitary spaces, and we wanted to make one-person space here. But this workshop was all about to confront with one material. So we decided to use natural wool because we made a competition where we designed a warming hut and we didn't win. And we wanted to use this material, so we made a wool chair. And then it was not enough for us, so we wanted to experience this material in bigger amounts. So we wanted to do something which was not existed before, and we wanted to take a look at it and feel it and how it works in real life. So we made this cabin, which was like it had a sitting position on the door. So if somebody was sitting on the door bench, then you couldn't enter. And there was a laying position. So it was like a psychoanalytic situation. So you could do it with yourself if you want. And these are the students pulling the wool onto these wooden sticks. We made 2 layers of wool, and it turned out that it insulates so good that there were like very cold evenings, and everybody could like sleep there, and it was very warm inside. And also it insulated sound very good. So these are the things that you cannot know until you try it. And we did this experiment with the students. This was the top of it. It was thin material. These diagonals are for straightening the structure. And this is how it looked from outside. So it was a small-scale project, but these students were very enthusiastic while doing it, and we really liked it, the final product. And since 2 years, we are teaching in the Technical University of Budapest, and they asked us to make a workshop for students there. And we really like this book. We just purchased this book 1 year ago. It's John Hajduk's Soundings book, which contains a lot of his drawings. But these drawings are about fantasy pavilions. So he made a lot of drawings about these pavilions, which he made because he wants other people or other students or other architects to realize them someday. So this is like a collection. This book is a collection of his drawings, what you can pick from, and you can realize whatever pavilion you want. And of course we couldn't make a pavilion in the rooms of the university, so we decided to do to make models with the gypsum models with the students. And this was an act like to train their eyes, actually, because as teachers or in teaching, we think that we can't really tell them what to do. We don't really know more than them. We just can show them things that they can train their eyes with and train their taste with. So with these pavilions, they maybe while they were making these, maybe they were training their eyes and sense of forms that maybe in the future they will not do very ugly, disgusting things. Even we made this table out of one piece of board, and the 4 L-shaped leftovers were forming the legs, so there were no waste material in this table. And finally, yeah, these are the students working on the models here. They really enjoyed it. And finally, this semester we came up with the idea to bring students to working sites and building sites where they can move materials and put them into different shapes. And this was important for us because we don't really touch any materials while studying in the university, and this was very new to them too, that they can put these materials in different structures. They can like build things out of these, and they were really happy doing this. And it's kind of more like sculptures, but it's very important to lift up something, you know, in order to feel that you are doing things out of these materials. You are not doing designs, you are not doing forms, you are always designing with real things and designing with real materials. So our approach in design basically is we don't really have a form or a final thing we want to reach. We just look around ourselves, look at the tools we have, look at the environment we are in, and we use those things and start to form some things. And whatever we draw, whatever we design, we always think about how to make it and who will make it, and we always think about we have to make those things. So our name is Architecture Uncomfortable Workshop. Is the uncomfortable part is it's uncomfortable for architects to think in terms of if they are designing something, they have to think about making it also, not just special and nice forms and shiny surfaces and so on. So these are the sculptures they made there, and we hope after this workshop they will think a bit differently how they design things or how they think about building.
So thank you to all the mentors for the short but not short stories of education. I would suggest to smoothly transit from the discussion to our main topic today, experiments platform. And I would like to remind that these kind people came here not only for this panel, but also to for their mentees who are impatient to present their experiments platform cycle to results. And I would invite you to take a small break and get back to the hall at 7 p.m. We need to rearrange the space a bit, and see you then.